Well, the largest globally significant bank merger since the global financial crisis was completed overnight, bringing together the troubled Swiss bank Credit Suisse with its rival UBS. Joining me now is our business reporter, Edward Boyd. Ed, the local market has been trading for around 20 minutes now. Has it reacted sharply to the news?
Laura, it has reacted pretty sharply. We can put up the ASX 200 live chart for you to take a look at. But we were expecting a fall of 1.3% today. It's down about 0.8% in early trade. So there's still a lot more time left in the day for trading, so it may fall further throughout the session. But what's happened, well, there's been, you can see here there's a bit of stability that's come to the ASX 200. We were expecting it to fall twice as much. So the losses aren't as bad as what was expected overnight. But really, this is this big merger between UBS and Credit Suisse, the troubled lender in Switzerland. Share prices plummeted over the last couple of weeks, and it's really been falling since the end of 2021. And the Swiss government has basically had to step in and broker this deal because UBS did not really want to merge with Credit Suisse. It was happy being its own bank. So the Swiss government's basically come in, fronted up a lot of money to help fund this deal and this acquisition. So it's going to bring together two of Switzerland's two largest banks. They're both globally significant banks. In other words, they're almost too big to fail. So they can't really go under because if they did go under, there would be serious implications for global financial markets. We've seen a little bit of that market instability really over the past couple of weeks, and obviously this deal is trying to sort of calm things down a bit. But it even got the Swiss president speaking at a press conference earlier today. Just take a listen.
The takeover of Credit Suisse by UBS is the best solution for restoring the confidence that has been lacking in financial markets recently, and for best managing the risk to our country and its citizens.
The big problem though, Laura, is we've seen so much pressure on the bank sector over the past few weeks. Credit Suisse has basically been too big to fail, but there's plenty of other banks out there, particularly in America, that are under severe pressure as well, with customers removing deposits. So this crisis, if you want to call it that, is not going away anytime soon.
Well, Ed, how did it get into so much trouble? Before I ask you about the Reserve Bank Governor's comments in the last couple of moments, was it its overexposure in the American market, or were there a few things that were going on there?
Look, there was a few big problems with Credit Suisse. One of them has been a series of scandals at the bank over the past few years. In 2021, I believe it was, a lot of their customers' personal information was leaked online. About 30,000 customer records were leaked online. And this is obviously a private Swiss bank, where you have a private Swiss bank account where you're basically anonymous and you can hide, you can conceal your assets at these places for private banking. And when customer information is leaked, it caused a lot of those customers to be upset, take their deposits out of the bank. So last year it reported a loss of more than $12 billion. And a lot of that was due to high net worth customers taking their money out of Credit Suisse. So when there's a run on deposits, which is what we also saw at Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank in America, the banks are under immense pressure. And that was one of the main reasons why Credit Suisse has really suffered over the past couple of years. Yeah,
OK. The nature of global banking means that Australia is not immune from anything that happens overseas. So the Reserve Bank Governor has, an official at the RBA has said our banking system is holding up strongly. Is this an unusual intervention here? Was it a necessary statement?
Look, this is the Assistant Governor of the Reserve Bank, Christopher Kent. Reserve Bank officials do regular speeches throughout the year, and he was scheduled to speak today at a conference in Sydney. And obviously he's tweaked his remarks a little bit because you've got to acknowledge what's been happening in the global banking sector over the past couple of weeks. So it's nothing unusual what he said. I just pulled out a little transcript from his speech. We'll just put it up on the screen for you, the actual quote. But he basically says, conditions in global bond markets have been strained recently following the failure of Silicon Valley Bank in the United States. Volatility in Australian financial markets has picked up, but markets are still functioning, and most importantly, Australian banks are unquestionably strong. What he's hinting at there, he continues in the speech basically talking about how the capital levels of Australian banks are particularly high when compared to their peers. So Australian banks have a lot of money put aside whenever there's a big shock, and they can then tap that money when they need it. And at the moment, Australian banks, he's saying their capital levels are good. There was a Q&A session as well following the speech, and Christopher Kent was asked about, the UBS merger, and he basically said one of the big problems has been there's been a few poorly run banks around the world which have basically caused this big downturn for the banking sector over the past couple of weeks.
There's been a lot of focus on America, Ed. Reputationally, has America's banking system suffered in all of this? Is that likely to have bigger ramifications?
Well, look, America, it's a very different banking system to Australia. We basically just have the big four, well, the big five now with Macquarie. Whereas over in America, there are hundreds of smaller banks that people would bank with in the States. So I don't necessarily know if their reputation has taken a massive hit, because there's the really big American banks that you can think of, like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and things like that helped bail out Signature Bank last week. So there's these smaller banks in America, and a run on deposits at a smaller bank really hurts them. So it's not really something that we necessarily see in Australia, because we don't have too many small banks. Most of our banks are incredibly large and well capitalised. So I think there's a big difference there between the two banking systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Ed, thanks so much for taking us through that. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura.